running is Darcy
It
Davis,
fits me.
so by default.
By default, so good.
Okay.
Recording in progress.
She's a piece of work.
Good evening, everyone. It's 7:02 p.m., and I'm calling the March 12th, 2024 Planning Board meeting to order. We have a number of items on our agenda tonight, but the first order of business is to take roll. So when I call your name, Planning Board members, please indicate that you're present. Pat Norton.
Present.
Jonathan Poor.
Jonathan Poor, present.
Bill Wheaton.
Bill Wheaton, present.
Emil Dahlquist.
Emil Dahlquist, present.
Beth Herr.
Beth, they're present.
Ms. Herr is present via Zoom. Rick Mitchell.
Present.
Matt Hamill.
Present.
And Marnie Crouch, present. So the first item on our agenda is a site plan approval. Patrick, would you be so kind as to read the notice that is required?
In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, and Town Zoning Laws, the Planning Board will hold a public hearing on March the 12th, 2024, at 7 p.m. at 577 Bay Road, Town Hall Memorial Room, and via Zoom to consider a site plan approval application to construct and install a 16 by 30 farm stand building and an 18 by 24 inch wooden sign on a 8-foot tall 4x4 wooden post. The property is located at 656 Asbury Street, Assessor's Map 19, Lot 4, in the RA zoning district. The applicant is Iron Ox Farm / Stacy Apple, and the owner of the property is Essex County Greenbelt Association.
I have reviewed the application, and Patrick, you can assure us that it has been properly noticed. So the only question I have is the farm stand going to be at the same location that the former farm stand was at?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So do any planning board members have any questions?
I have a quick question. The sign says it's hand-painted, and I'm assuming that's by a sign painter rather than a craft project. Great. And then the other comment I had is it looks like you have ground-mounted solar lights trying to shine 8 feet in the air, and that might be a challenge. So you might have an electrician, even if you're doing solar lights, have an electrician help you with that to both make sure that the lights actually get to the sign and that if they have illumination to get to the sign, they also don't get into motorists' eyes. So that would be my only comment, is the lighting on the sign.
Do any other members have any questions? Well, I have one observation, and that observation is that if you're building a farm stand, that must mean that your gardens are successful and that your business is thriving. So I'm pleased that you're at this stage right now, so congratulations. So,
I have one other comment, which
What's
is
that?
on 2C appearance. There's a wonderful typo. It's spelled neighborhoofed, and I would make a motion that the planning board maybe adopt that as the official spelling for any neighborhoods in equestrian areas.
I second that motion.
so I'll entertain a motion to approve the request for findings and the site plan review application.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So I'll call roll. Pat Norton.
Pat Norton, aye.
Jonathan Poor.
Jonathan Poor, aye.
Bill Wheaton.
Bill Wheaton, aye.
Emil Dahlquist.
Emil Dahlquist, aye.
Beth Herr.
Beth, her aye.
Rick Mitchell.
Aye.
And Marnie Crouch, aye. Good luck. I hope the weather cooperates this summer and you have a successful growing season.
Painless, right?
Yeah, that was, yeah, thank you.
You were-
Thank you, guys.
How's the baby? Didn't you have a little baby the last time you were here?
Yeah, he's 3 now.
He's 3 now? Oh, no. This means we're getting old.
Come to the farm this summer.
We will. Bye.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is the continued public hearing on the site plan review and the stormwater management permit application for the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District's athletic field project. So it's my understanding that both Tom Houston and Kathleen Herbal for Gale Associates are here via Zoom.
Yeah.
Correct. Good evening. It's Kathy.
Is Mr. Houston?
Yes, Madam Chair, it's Tom Houston, I'm here. Thank you.
Right, so, Mr. Houston, if you would like to summarize where we are, it's my understanding that we're darn close to having all the outstanding issues that I identified at the last meeting resolved, and it might be time for us to consider closing the public hearing and beginning our deliberations.
Well, I think after a long period of effort, we are in fact at the point of conclusion in the process here. Gale Associates issued an 8-point memo which endeavored to wrap up a bunch of loose ends, and we commented, and I don't think there's disagreement on our part with any of the proposals that Gale Associates has set forth. The first one, they suggested it would be appropriate to test the private wells that are in proximity to the site. I would say with regard to that, there is no evidence that any of those wells would actually be impacted by any of the infiltrated runoff, but I suppose you can't say with absolute certainty that they would not be. So I think a testing program in accordance with the recommendation of the Board of Health is appropriate out of an abundance of caution. There was a geotechnical report that was part of the submittal. It was by Novus Geotechnical. The focus of that report was on structural issues, not necessarily stormwater, but it was marked draft, so that has been finalized, which is appropriate. The third item that was discussed was the public address system. What Gale Associates proposed is that there be 2 speakers for the public address system for the football field / multi-purpose field. They would orient them in a northerly direction, so the sound would be somewhat directed northerly. And again, the current proposal is from the school district is to operate the sound system until 8:30 on weeknights and until 9:30 on Friday and Saturday. We had suggested maybe the school department would be willing to discuss those hours with the planning board. I don't know whether there's been any progress in that area. There was a request for information about the amenities building. The Gale Associates memorandum included an attachment that showed the full floor plan of the amenities building, which actually had been previously submitted, and they're also previously submitted. There was a rendering of what the amenities building would look like. The fifth item was fire department review of the project, and There was an attachment to the Gale Associates submittal indicating that the fire department has approved the project. The sixth item was noise mitigation for the tennis courts. Gale Associates is proposing to affix a fabric sound absorbing barrier to the fencing at the tennis court. It's kind of a nuance, but I think we had suggested it might be appropriate to have that barrier on 3 sides of the tennis court. I think the Gale Associates memo did mention 2 as opposed to 3 sides. The seventh item, and this is a requirement of the state stormwater handbook, Gale Associates has now developed a first-year maintenance budget and a draft subsequent year maintenance budget. They're a few $1,000s, and they're attached to the Gale Associates memoranda. The 8th item was regarding heat testing of the synthetic turf. The turf does get warm under bright sun conditions, and the school we suggested in one of our comments that the school district should have a policy that governed when the fields could be used or not used depending on the temperature of the turf. And the Gale Associates memo did submit a memorandum from the school district which summarizes their current policy with regard to use or precluding use of the athletic fields based upon bright sun conditions and the temperature of the turf. The final item, I said there were 8, but there's actually 9. The final item was a photometric plan. This is a refinement of prior photometric plans. And the current plan pretty well cuts off illumination short of abutting residential properties, and it pretty well cuts it off at the edge of the wetland. There is some illumination from the athletic fields that extends onto the public way just south of the bleachers, but it pretty well cuts off at the residential property line. I think out of all the points that were analyzed, there's only 2 that actually border on the residential property. And at that point, the illumination level is only 1/10 of a foot candle. There is no illumination within approximately 100 feet of the nearest residence. So that's Gale Associates summary and our evaluation of it. And as I say, I think a lot of the key issues have been satisfactorily addressed at this point. Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, be pleased to answer any questions.
Am I correct? It was my understanding, and I would have to double check this, but did the Conservation Commission's orders of condition preclude any illumination of the wetlands?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think the photometric plan as submitted is consistent with that.
Okay. I did have another question about the operations and maintenance budget.
Yes.
Is this part of the $15 million that was allocated by vote at town meeting, or is this separate and apart from that budget? I mean, from that
It would have to be, I
allocation.
believe, apart from it, because this would be an ongoing annual expense. It would continue in perpetuity. So I doubt that's part of the appropriation of town meeting, which I understand was an appropriation for construction, not for long-term maintenance.
And would you concur with that, Ms. Hervel?
Yes, I would.
Okay,
Hello.
Yes.
Can I just make a comment on that? My name is Vincent Leone. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for the school district.
yeah,
That ongoing maintenance would be part of our regular operating budget after the initial construction.
so in other words, the requirements set forth in the orders of conditions that the Conservation Commission issued would be part of your ongoing operating budget as well, not part of the $15 million.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Did anyone else have any comments? Ms. Giroux, I know you did submit some memoranda to the planning board. So if you have anything to add.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you.
I do have one question.
Sure.
I talked to David Smith from the Public Health Board, and the Public Health Department doesn't do well testing. And it's not clear to me that we can require a public body to expend public funds on private property. So I'm questioning whether, in fact, A, that's legal.
Well, my recollection was that when we considered the special permit for 133 Essex, that well testing was in fact part of that
Yeah, that's a
process.
private entity, not a public entity.
Well, actually, the orders of conditions require testing.
Right, by the applicant, that it's a private entity, it's a for-profit corporation. We're talking about you're requiring a public body to expend money to the benefit of a private party.
No, I'm saying the Conservation Commission's orders of conditions with respect to this project
Yeah.
requires the school district to do testing.
Of the wells on the private property?
No, with respect to various areas
Yeah,
in the
no,
wetlands.
that I get, that because that's on the public property. What I'm talking about is the,
Oh, I understand what you're saying, the testing of the private wells. Well, as Mr. Houston said, I mean, in the event that there was some contamination of those wells, I think it's
I know what,
You know, the
I know,
school
I
district
get the
can-
logic. I
Rick,
get the
is your concern that the owner of the well should request testing as opposed to
Yeah,
some board,
Well, my
testing it
my
for him
question is,
without his request? What's the?
my question is the legality of requiring a public body to benefit private citizens through a testing program. If they have a concern, and I think as Gale Associates pointed out, they can have their wells tested and establish a baseline. And again, talking to David Smith from the Health Department, he said the abutted wells are at least 100 feet below surface. He said there's no way that any kind of contamination is going to reach those in 100 years. So I'm going, okay, so we've got a legal potential problem there, and the other is if we're testing on site and we're identifying a potential problem, okay. If then we can address the potential problem then, but it's sort of like going, well, I understand why you would want to do it, but I think it's overreach, and I'm not sure it's legal.
I tend to agree with Rick. In addition, there's nobody qualified to determine and define the required method of testing, nor the acceptable criteria in which you would be performing those tests. You can easily specify drinking quality water, but I agree with Rick. The on-site testing of the water that the Conservation Commission ordered is sufficient protection for the project.
Well, Mr. Houston, what do you have to say? It seemed to me that you said in the exercise of caution, it would be good to have baseline testing of those wells. I mean, particularly if those people who use those wells rely on it for drinking water.
Can't address the legal question that has been raised, and all I can say is that out of an abundance of caution, I think it's appropriate that there be some testing. The testing that was mandated by the Conservation Commission is in a different location for a different purpose. They're testing the water in the Miles River. This would be testing of nearby private wells for residential use. So I think the gentleman who said that the chance of an impact is remote, but I would rather, our recommendation would be to test it, just to be on the, just to be out of an abundance of caution. I think testing is appropriate. If it's not legal, I can't address the legal aspects of it.
Right. And do any other?
I just share, I understand what Rick's saying, and I agree with that in one respect. I also think, is there potential that there could be some kind of legal ramifications if somebody down the line has a problem with their well? So would it be in the best interest of the town to do that? Or maybe even ask if they would voluntarily do it instead of it be a requirement?
Well, you know, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't speak to, you know, sort of the legal premise here, but unless the abutting property owners can demonstrate that, in fact, the alleged pollution took place because of the turf fields, that's going to be a real legal nightmare, because
Well, that's why you would want the baseline testing, because then if there's subsequent testing.
no, I get the logic. I get the logic, but I'm concerned. I just have a concern about a public body
Right.
providing services to a private landowner. I'm not sure of the legality of that.
Well, the question is whether
And
that's a
second, I think
service.
it's overreach
Right.
because they're monitoring the site. And everybody's talked about how the gradient is down to the Miles River. Well, if you're monitoring the gradient down to the Miles River and you're picking up potential pollution, then, okay, it's going to be much more apparent in that location than it is anywhere else. So I just think this is overreach.
Well, my thinking is that this might not, in fact, be a service. It might be a form of protection for the school district.
Yeah,
because
but
they
the
will-
school district has replied that they don't want to do it.
Ms. Harville, do you see the wisdom of maybe having a baseline for these wells? Because then it will be clear whether any subsequent problems are related to the athletic fields or not, as the case may be. It gives you a form of protection.
My only comment would be that all our stormwater and such, you know, from under the fields and that all flows to Miles River. And the wetlands affiliated with that. So if the wetlands or the wells are on the other, you know, out of our drainage area per se, you know, theoretically it wouldn't get there. As I think Tom also said, it's probably a slim chance, but as far as the legal question is, you know, who can pay for it or whatever, I don't know if maybe it's something that could be considered at a condition. If something is suspected in the Miles River or detected in the Miles River, then perhaps there's a requirement that adjacent wells be tested or something along those lines. That's kind of the only resolution that I think makes
This would
sense.
provide the school with some pretty cheap insurance,
Right.
right? that in fact, if there's something in the ground in that area now, that 5 or 10 years from now, the turf fields didn't add to it. I mean, if I was on the school board, I'd want to spend a few $100s per well to test, just to make sure I knew what was there before I disrupted everything.
Right, because if you found any problem in the Miles River, and then the well owners came forward and said, well, our wells are showing some type of pollution. Well, at that point, you don't know if that pollution existed before the athletic fields were constructed
Yeah, if
or
it
not.
pre-existed, you're held harmless. As I say, it's pretty cheap insurance.
I would concur with that price analysis. It's hundreds, not thousands of dollars in my experience.
I mean, it ensures that if there is a problem with those wells, an existing problem, that the school district then doesn't have to get involved in some type of controversy as to who's responsible if there's a problem already.
And as for Rick's concern, I mean, the country is filled with examples where the government goes in and tests private wells. After all sorts of spillage, after, accidents all over the place, there's tons of evidence where the government goes in and tests private wells because they're concerned.
That's after the fact, when in fact pollution has been detected, then they come in and say, well, you may be violating existing rules and regulations and statutes, so we need to test to determine in fact if there is a violation.
No. When the lead pipes were tested in Michigan, they tested areas that were far removed from where initial contamination was. The government was being very cautious and testing lots of wells for lead contamination.
You're conflating piped water with well water in terms of Michigan.
Well, it's different, but you raised the general legal question of whether they have a right to test water.
The problem is they didn't test the water, and it wasn't until people showed signs of lead poisoning that they went, boy, we better start a testing program, and then they found out there was a serious problem.
Well, let's
Wouldn't it be nice if they did that in this town?
We could go on and around.
Excuse me,
So-
I would rather that we discuss this, more fully.
Yeah, that's
Can we
fine.
get legal put it before somebody legally? It may not be our jurisdiction, it may be the school districts, but can we just get some kind of opinion on it? I mean, even if it is wisdom, we also have to figure out, is this our jurisdiction? So that's where I'm trying to understand it.
The point is that if the cost is relatively nominal, and it
Right.
provides the school district with insurance, I think that would be foolish to make a mountain out of a molehill, particularly when our peer reviewer is recommending this, okay?
I
So,
said if I were on the school board, it's really cheap insurance.
But is it, that's my question, is it the school board, whose
it's the
decision
school
is
board's
it?
obligation to raise the legal issue. It's not our obligation to raise the legal issue for them. I mean, we're making, an assessment based on our peer reviewers' input right now. So, but I think we need to talk about that and other
Okay.
potential conditions all at once. So I want to hear from anybody else who may have their hand raised, or anybody else who's before us this evening in the audience.
Andrew St. Pierre has just raised his hand.
Yes.
Good evening. I'm not quite sure how this Zoom link works, but Madam Chairwoman, I have one question on the Gale responses to the last questions that were posed to them that they provided answers to. The question regarding the PA system, two-part question on my part, and perhaps Ms. Hervell can respond to it at your request. The response indicates that they're going to point the speakers northward because the nearest point of intersection with a northward abutter is 1,300 feet, which is essentially a quarter of a mile. I'd like to know which property or what properties that responds to and what are the measurement points, because the nearest corner of my property is not a quarter of a mile from the track. If I walked in a straight line, it's probably under 300 feet. Add another 150 if you stuck the speakers in the middle of the field, and you're at 450 feet. If you go to my house, you're at 700. So that's half the indicated distance or thereabouts. So I don't know if it's my property that's being discussed in that context or somebody else's, but I'm sort of northwest, I think, if I figure it correctly, and was curious to see what the measurement point was that arrived at that 1,300 foot distance. The second part is more specific, and I wonder if this is something for, I suppose, the planning board to consider amongst themselves. When the PA I assume that the indicated use is not that there's going to be people on that mic 7 days a week. Are there any indications from the administration as to what level of play warrants access to the microphone? Will youth team practices have people up on that mic? Will evening games that are not high school events have access to that mic? Will they be able to change the volumes? And I say this in respect to a nephew of mine who spent a number of years as the athletic director at Danvers High. And I had many conversations with him about the lighting issues and the sound issues. And one of the things that he pointed out was that one of the most problematical things from his point of view, the thing that gave him the most agita, was youth sports getting access to the fields, but then getting access to the PA system and basically driving the abutting neighbors crazy. They didn't respect the volume levels. They didn't respect how to use it and not monkey with the controls. And he was forever, he said, fielding complaints, verbal and written complaints from neighbors because of that. Not because of the high school games, not because of any of those events, but because of the youth sport leagues wanting to get on that PA and use it. Because for their little games, it's a big deal to have your name on the loudspeaker. So again, I'd like to know what kind of what is the thinking of the administration with regard to access to the sound? How are they going to control that, and what controls will be in place for who gets to use that PA system, and and who doesn't? I suppose. Those are my questions. Thank you.
I'd be happy to address both of those. I guess first off, in regards to the sound volume, the system that's going to be utilized will have a set volume, which will only be able to be changed through a password through the actual computer system on the sound system. And that volume will be adjusted, will be set, to meet, certain limits. And what I'd like to do is, if I can share my screen, I have an exhibit. Part of our issue is the school hasn't quite picked their PA system, but we've been doing some analysis to see, and I just want to show you this if I can. I don't know, is it allowing me to share, or do I have to hit something?
You should be allowed to share. You're a panelist, so.
All right, hold on. Let me see. How do I share screen? There we go. All right. All right. Does everybody see this?
Oh, well done. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So this is okay. This is the south property line. This is your grandstands. The school sits here. This is our track and field. This is the stadium field where the PA system would be. It's not going to be at any of the other fields. And what we're looking at here, and I know Ms. Giro had actually, in one of her comments, noted about maybe using some smaller sound systems and such, but What this shows, which I might not be showing, let me see if I want to get you guys out of the way so you can see the scale here. We're coming up with an average at these points with the blues of 76 decibels, which even along the southern property line. And what's that equivalent to is a washing machine is 78. Some street traffic is around 80 decibels, just to give you a sense of where that's at. And that 1,300 feet basically was measured from the grandstands up to the first abutter, which I think is, I think it's Miss Giro's home that we were trying to analyze. But what we're trying to do is point, we just took an analysis to try to see where we were at with the system. And these speakers can also be turned a little bit differently. Maybe this one isn't going directly this way, since we know we have abutters up in this direction. We don't have really any abutters over in this direction. We're out into the woods and such. So this one can possibly be tweaked a little bit as well. But just to give you a sense that we are looking at this, we are concerned, we hear what you're saying. Regarding what programs will or won't be given permission to use the system, that's going to be a school decision. But what I do know is we're proposing a pretty elaborate press box as part of the program, and I suspect they're not going to just let anybody in that press box. It's not going to be available to just anyone. I think it's going to have to be oh, sorry, I've got other stuff. I'm hitting buttons and everything else. Hold on, let me get out here. Oh, now I'm back to where.
Oh, I would say, thank you for that picture. I would say that if that were an artillery plot, I'd be living in my cellar because you're basically aimed at my house, more or less.
Like I said, though, but this is here, and then you've got distance and also woods before we'd even get there. So.
Well, what you're calling woods, I'll beg to differ, and I'm sorry to interrupt,
Okay.
but there are no woods there. There's a single line of trees
Could
that
I,
follows the edge of the road.
so,
Okay.
A
can I
single
ask
line
a,
of trees is not woods.
can I ask a question? And he said, and that's your property that abuts, and then it would be Gradle Clark's, Gradle and Peter Clark's property behind yours, right?
No, I'm up in the north, by this plot, it would be northwest corner of this square. If the press box and the line south of the press box, that's south, right?
Yeah, and isn't your property down on the south side, though?
No, I'm up on the west corner, which is top right.
What property is that? Is it beyond Ann's and the Clark property?
It's 743. It abuts from the street to the end of the parking lot, basically.
Oh, that's right. It's right at the corner there.
Oh, you've forgotten about me.
That's a small, right, you're right. It's right on the road, right?
Right.
Got
Right.
it. Okay, now I know where you are.
Yeah.
But you're going to be blocked by pretty much the building.
School building is here,
The middle and high school,
sits right here.
yeah.
No. You go, move your cursor to the top right-hand corner of your blue square.
Right here?
No, on my screen, you're on the left corner. There you go.
Okay,
And from the press box to where your little cursor is the hand, that is an uninterrupted, unobstructed line to my house.
this is wooded into,
There's a single line of trees, yes.
this is a big clump of wetlands. We've got the baseball field is here.
Yeah, your house is on the left. It's on the left top corner.
It's over here. This is, the school sits here. You drive into the facility. I'm just looking, let me, trying
I
to,
think, have you switched sides of where the press?
yeah,
the
this
new
is a
press
new
box?
press box. The old press box sat over here, which pointed this way. I don't know what's
this
the
is-
PA. So
So
this-
you've put the home side now on the
Yeah,
opposite.
Yep,
This is us.
You flipped it.
And that's the.
We haven't flipped it. It's always been, well, our design, it's always been on this side.
May I
meant
clarify,
the new
top of the
print
sheet is
box is
north,
not-
just so all can agree?
Up
Top of
is
the sheet
north.
is north.
Yep. The school is to the west, and the wetlands, the marsh is, way over this way.
Okay, where's the baseball field?
The baseball field sits right here.
Okay, I'm oriented now. I get it.
Okay, sorry.
No
Didn't
worries.
mean to confuse you.
You did, but that's okay. It's my confusion.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay, I understand now.
Right.
Okay, so the point, what we're trying to make though, is even, just, this is within the school, well, not the school property, you'd go just off on the south side.
Right.
But the limits, what I'm trying to show is, if you look at the scale with the blues and such, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to give you a sense of the decibels that, we're trying to
Yeah.
design the system to minimize those decibels. And right now, we're having average, this system shows an average of around 78 decibels, which is equivalent to a washing machine. But
Right.
that's right here near the property. As
Right.
the further you go away, you lose 6 decibels every 100 feet. So by the time we get to you, we should be down fairly low.
So one last question then, as long as we're
Sure.
on the topic, if the committee doesn't mind my dominating the time here. Did you do any baseline testing of the ambient levels of volume during a game last season or any time recently?
We have
So-
not, and part of the reason we don't do that is a lot of the schools have very old systems and
Yeah.
aren't as efficient.
Yeah.
So the technology obviously has gone a long way, and like I said, we work very closely with the sound people, and that's why we've been working with the school to
Yeah,
make a decision on which sound system. But like I said, they do have, they know the issues, and they have built-in controls to make sure someone can't go turn up the volume. They've made it pretty much, someone has to have a password and everything else to change it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once it's set, it's set. So,
got it. Okay, well, that's good to hear. I appreciate that.
okay. And like I said, regarding what programs and such the school anticipates, like I said, I don't suspect they're going to let the youth programs, unless it's some, special Super Bowl or something that maybe
Yeah.
they have some adult run the system, but.
Well, that question was really for the planning board to consider.
Okay.
I didn't expect Gail to have to weigh in on that. So I
Yeah, that's
appreciate-
fine. All right, now I got to stop sharing.
Well done, though. I wouldn't have been able to do that.
Well, now I don't know how to get back, so I got to get back to here. Zoom meeting, whoops, no, I'm not very good with this stuff. Get back to sharing. How do I get rid of that? All right, hold on. Look at my bottom menu.
You can turn off or share, right?
Yeah, just turn it off.
Turn it off.
Sorry about that. My screen's just not letting me get back to the meeting where I have controls.
That's all the comment from the public
There we go. I got it now. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that, folks.
on the.
Okay.
Online.
Thank you. Hi, Michelle Horgan, 141 School Street. Again, thank you so much to the Planning Board for taking this time and effort to review this project. This is important to the town and important to the butters, important to everyone in our community. Anyone that's walked or driven by Patton Park, 8 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, knows how important the park is to our community. It's wonderful to see kids out there playing basketball, pickleball, older people, parks, Sunday parks. It is part of our community. The abutters to Patton Park, having lived in town for 30 years, I'm not an abutter, but I know that living next to the park, they know when they buy a house and they bought their house next to the park, they know what they're getting. And again, good and bad, fabric of our town. I'm biased. My 4 children went through the district and were treated and grew, and it was a wonderful experience for my family. We entrusted our children's educational welfare, academic, athletic, emotional well-being to the school. I trust the school. I do. I think this project and the district have been doing a good job, and dealing with and working with the planning board and working with the butters. We are a community. This project is a community-based project. And those abutters, I believe the school was built in 1962. I don't know how many abutters have been there since 1962, but when you buy a home next to a school, it's joyful, it's annoying, it's lights, it's everything. It's like being a parent to kids. But this is our community, and I just hope you take that into account. The district, in my opinion, I feel has been very generous in terms of accommodating the abutters with noise and lights. I just hope you take that into consideration, know that this is really important to our community, and a lot of people voted this in last year. And I feel like working, as the district has worked with Gale Associates and the planning board and other boards in town, they've done their due diligence. So I'm hoping that we can close the public hearing and you guys can work and do your job. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, so we'll take roll call vote.
I've got a question. Will that preclude Mr. Houston from participating from here on out?
I don't.
Say again? What was the question? What was the question, Emil?
By closing the hearing, does that then preclude that Tom Houston cannot get involved in our discussions of the
Pretty
conditions?
much.
So that is true. Okay.
Patrick, can you answer that?
It's board deliberation from here on.
Okay.
Okay. All right, then we'll proceed with this roll call vote. Pat Norton,
Aye.
Jonathan Poor,
Jonathan Poor, aye.
Bill Wheaton,
Bill Wheaton, aye.
Emil Dahlquist,
Aye.
Beth Herr,
Aye.
Rick Mitchell,
Aye.
and Marnie Crouch, aye. So the public hearing is now closed. So, as you all know, I sent a memo around and I advised board members if they had conditions that they would like to see affixed to any board decision, that they transmit those proposed conditions to Patrick, and that Patrick would compile them, and then we would be able to address each member's suggested conditions. So I believe Patrick did that, and that is part of your package. So I think at this juncture, we could turn to those proposed conditions. So,
Did you want to go through them one by one, Marnie, or
well, I would.
starting with yours, or?
I would be open to board members suggesting ways of approaching this. I know that I have, we didn't attribute names to the different proposed conditions, but I believe Patrick, through inadvertence, set my conditions to all planning board members. And so I don't know if anybody has any issues with identifying what conditions they're suggesting versus trying to remain anonymous. So,
Should we just go through the list? I think it's the easiest way, isn't it?
There's going to be a lot of duplication, so the question would be to go through by categories or take the most comprehensive list and then look at other categories. It's go through every, or we could just say that's a repeat when we hit a
yeah,
repeat.
well, I
Maybe we
think,
start with yours, which is most comprehensive.
right,
And then when we hit repeats, we just
right.
skip
Yeah,
past.
not everybody organized it the same way or
Right.
gave it the same title.
Right, so we will have to, pause at various times to let everyone try and sort through where how the proposed conditions of different members relate to others. What I did in doing my conditions was to go through Mr. Houston's 2 memorandum from February 20th, and I went through those 2 memorandums very, very carefully, and where he suggested conditions, I went ahead and drafted a proposed condition. So the first memorandum dated February 20th, he addressed Gale Associates' work product, and so the first conditions that he suggested related to soils. So the first 2 conditions then try and implement his suggestions with respect to that. And those were really related to the test pits. So he did indicate that he was amenable to having the test pits excavated prior to construction as opposed to
Prior to,
even,
yeah.
you know, approval. So the first 2 conditions track what he suggested, but I tried to put some teeth in them, because what he said was that depending on the results of those test pits, which he didn't anticipate causing a problem, but to the extent that they might, there would have to be some redesign of the project. So the question in my mind is, who's going to oversee that, and how is that going to, that review be accomplished? So each member can then take a few minutes and read those first 2 conditions.
well, you suggested it go to the peer review.
Right.
An unusual thing to have done after the peer review is complete to approve a
Well, but
project.
that's the
The
problem.
peer review.
The problem is that the project actually might not be complete if it has to be redesigned based on the results of the test pits. So basically, it's, if the results of the test pits aren't as anticipated, there has to be a redesign of certain components of this project. Who will review that? It's not going to be us.
So you're having them done by a Massachusetts licensed soil evaluator.
Mr. Houston isn't third-party engineer review of the stamped engineer's design. This is a condition to confirm that the design is appropriate. It's an unusual condition to propose after having the peer review done. I've never seen a project revisit the peer review based on soil testing.
Okay, just let me give you a hypothetical then. Just say, just hypothetically,
Yep.
right before construction,
Yep.
they dig the pits, and oh my God, they don't show what they're supposed to show. And now Gale Associates has to go back to the drawing boards. Okay, we're gonna, you know, we've had Mr. Houston review all their work to date. If they have to redesign some components of this project, do we just rubber stamp what they've done? Do we accept what they do just because?
Yes.
Well, how about this? How about having,
Clearly not a lawyer.
No.
how about having the licensed soil evaluator notify the planning board or the Conservation Commission that the soil tests showed a deviation from the 3 previous soil tests, and it would require a modification of the design and installation?
Sure, that's all that's being asked, that there was an assumption in terms of what the design numbers are or should be.
Right.
Now there has to be confirmation that is the right number.
Right.
That's standard. I don't know what you're talking about, but we're not re-engineering anything. It's up to the engineer to handle that, but we want to know
That there's a deviation.
that there's a deviation, and
Saying it's not standard to peer review.
Right. No,
Post-
it's avoiding the peer
post-engineer.
reviewer.
Okay, so you want to identify someone other than the peer reviewer who will report to us that
Right.
a redesign
Right,
is.
you want the soil evaluator and/or, I don't know, is Gale Associates, are you,
she can't be.
Close the public hearing.
Close the public.
are you going to be clerk of the works? Hello?
She's not, we closed the public hearing.
So I thought I could ask an information question. I'm not asking for a peer review
Right, but
opinion. I just want to know.
wonder-
Well, you
She's
can, you
still
can't
here.
theoretically reopen the meeting, but I don't think this is worth it.
We're not reopening the meeting.
We'll just have the soil.
For a question. No, I think that you can if you really had to, but you don't need to do that for this.
All right.
Your comments were, I thought.
The clerk of the
right
works
on.
will have to report it.
As long as it's in a condition, yeah, that's right.
Yep. I'm just saying, avoid the peer review of the
Yeah.
post-test.
Mr. Houston said he would evaluate the results of that test if asked to, and that's all we want to do is be notified of a difference, so we understand what.
Right, then we
How the
can decide.
drawings will be
Right,
changed,
then-
if at all. I don't
Then
know.
we can decide if we need
Yeah.
further
Yeah.
expertise.
Yeah.
So I just have a question.
Just a second, I'm going to amend this
Oh, wait.
by be responsible, the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District shall be responsible for reporting the results of the testing and advise the planning board if the field drainage design must be adjusted, and thereafter report to the planning board whether the revised field drainage design.
Be the planning board or the building inspector? Because the building actually is pretty good at, Rich is pretty good at soils, actually.
Well, that's a
Inspector
good
that gets
question.
notified, not the planning board.
Patrick, where was all this information supposed to go in town hall? The results of testing and so forth,
It would go to the building inspector.
to the building inspector? Yeah, so he would be the one.
You would be the one notifying, and then Patrick would find out through Rich.
Right. He works for me.
Yeah.
So advise the building inspector, not the planning board?
Right, it would advise the,
Yeah, this is about construction,
Yeah, yeah.
not about zoning.
But then, and thereafter report to the planning board whether the revised field drainage design is satisfactory. That would be the responsibility of the building inspector. So he would just tell us whether.
right, he would have to enforce it and say, well, it's not in conformance with the original specifications and design documents.
Okay, so the second paragraph then has to be adjusted consistent with the first.
So are we asking for a total of 7 test pits?
That's what the peer reviewer asked for.
I'm just asking,
This material was taken directly from his,
no, I understand. I'm just wondering, and I'm gonna rely on Pat here, whether we need 7 test pits. Are the soils dramatically shifting in 100 yards? I think
Not
probably
typically.
not.
Not typically, but, I guess, so, it's, I guess I wondered, are we gonna take every single one of the peer reviewers' comments and condition those, or are we gonna generally, because Gale Associates said, peer reviewer's been satisfied. He's made a bunch of comments, Gale's,
Now we decide
Responded
whether
in
we're
support.
going to adhere to them or not.
and I would say,
Yeah.
maybe holistically, we should just condition that.
Condition what?
I don't know, the fact that generally, the general condition that all the peer reviewers' comments are satisfactory, we met them in Gale Associates' response, and they're confirmed by the building inspector that they've been met.
I don't know what you just said.
Like, we are identifying each one individually,
Right.
Yeah.
which is a bit redundant, I think, to do in an order of conditions, rather than just a blanket statement that,
In other words, you want to meld them all into one paragraph?
I want to condition.
I think what's happened,
Subject to-
I think what's happened, though, is that a lot of what our peer reviewer had recommended, Kathy Herfel said, yes, we'll take care of it. And they did drawing changes, they did this and that.
Yeah.
The outstanding items still have not been addressed that we're keeping in this list. We have to decide, is that a legitimate one to keep in your orders of conditions
Okay.
or not? So that's all we're doing, I think. We're not going to repeat his whole,
I got it.
his whole 85 90.
So if I'm not mistaken, I believe that the test pits outlined in the proposal were more for the building and less for general field. And I think Mr. Houston, I might be wrong here, but he was speculating that if they satisfied the building location, they would probably satisfy elsewhere. But that might be a little contradictory to what his original intent was. This is bringing it back to its original intent. Would you agree with that, Emil?
Yeah, right.
And if you're gonna dig 5, you might as well dig 7. They're
Yeah, it's not that
pretty
much.
easy to, it's not.
That's with a backhoe there.
I thought Mr. Houston did an outstanding job in reviewing this, and I think that it's important for the planning board to clearly accept that work and make sure it's crystal clear and that there's no confusion as to what is required here, and this is definitely part of the requirements.
Well, do we want to take a vote on soils then, or do we want to wait till the end?
Why don't we go through with the whole thing and run,
Okay,
if you don't mind?
no?
So the second one, again, Mr. Houston was concerned about compaction, so this is just made a condition. The importance of it is highlighted by making it a condition.
Yep.
I think it's good.
I think the next one is redundant from above.
Well, this is different, actually, because this is, the first one was with respect to soils in different areas, and this is with respect to the infiltration trench, and these are, in particular, I referenced the comments that I took them from. So what we should do is, instead of having
wait a
the
minute, okay.
town peer reviewer, that would be the building inspector.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Any problems with that, then, the second one?
No, looks good.
And then the light and noise issues, if you want, I know probably, Emil, did you address the light and noise?
Yeah, I did. So let's just look at, maybe we can start with yours. I think mine, I just have one
Do we
additional.
have yours?
They're all.
Yeah, it's the one that has on the footer, the date 2024.
Got it.
3/10.
Okay, got it.
It's 2 pages. I put lighting mitigation as my second major topic. So you can use, I'll read mine if you like, and then,
Read yours. You don't need to read it, we can,
okay,
we all have it, right?
yeah. The only one I might change is number 5, where recommending discussions between the abutters and the school district for use and management of lights to resolve when and under what conditions the abutters can expect to have illuminated fields adjacent to their properties. And so those details ideally would be worked out with those most impacted by it, I guess, provided it's reasonable.
Right, and so you recommend, I said these
Shall.
typo in there, and the abutter shall negotiate reasonable light system cutoff times, because, well, the present proposal, it's 365 days a year, please. I mean, it really is overly broad, and I think that it would be most appropriate for the abutters and the school district to try and come to an understanding of what is reasonable and what is not. Certainly, there's no need for lights on June 21st or the summer months. And so I think that a requirement that they try and work it out would be the best way. And if by chance that there's some real sticking point here, then the planning board could reopen the public hearing and try and resolve it. But I do see, and I know Ms. Giroux raised this issue, that, you know, it is one thing for the school system to make these fields available for the students. That is an educational use. If the school system leases these fields for, and raises money by doing so,
Yeah,
that's a commercial purpose.
That's out.
So I think that's the conversation that the abutters and the school district needs to have. And so, for example, if the students aren't using the fields at 8:30 or 9:30 on the weekends, but some league of adults, football or baseball league, is using it, well, that can be curtailed, because obviously in the summer months, you know, there's peaceful enjoyment of your property, and if you've got something going on seven nights a week, that's, and it's not students, that's really unreasonable, and it's not something that would be protected by the Dover Amendment.
I'd only just say that being on the receiving end as an applicant with conditions such as this, where it's left up to the applicant to negotiate with the butters, it's always a difficult process, because there's many butters, there's an applicant, there's different feelings.
Well, actually,
but-
they're lucky
and then
here
this is-
because
sorry,
there's
excuse
not
me.
that many
The second
abutters.
one was that I know the school district has reached out to the adjacent school districts, so they've reached out to the athletic directors in the town of Ipswich, Manchester, and others, and their use and hours of use are in alignment with what's been established at those other educational athletic facilities. So I was satisfied that they've come up with what is consistent in conditions for use.
Well, these butters are really close,
And
though.
they're-
I mean, 150 feet.
Well, so they're in other
So I,
school districts as well. If we're going to, it's a discussion of how to condition it. I would suggest it not leaving it up to the abutters and the applicant, the school
I
district.
think to see what agreement they can reach, and then we can evaluate it. You know, it sounds okay to me, but
I think it's better that they do it than we do it.
And if they get stuck, we can help.
Okay.
no, I'm just going to add, I think, from what I've heard from the abutters, they're very reasonable people, and,
I'm not saying they're not.
no, I know, but
I've-
I'm just saying, it's not a group.
No, I think what he's trying to do.
The irony-
is
It's not a
actually
group who
be
just oppose
rigid.
anything, you know, just.
I think, Pat, you're trying to be a little more definitive.
Yeah, it's a pretty subjective condition. to put out
So,
there.
I'm fine with the wording, just if you take out "it fails" and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, we're trying to say, here's the condition, not describe
Yeah.
why we need to condition it.
Yeah.
Or if you're gonna do that, say, it must take into account holidays and whatever it is that we want them to take account of.
Okay, so are you looking at my list or my condition or Amy's?
I think mine, when he was take out the,
Just looking at Amos, yeah.
Because mine is shall and yours is recommend.
Yeah,
You're fine with shall?
yeah, oh, absolutely.
Okay, so
because
we'll
that-
take out
that's a
the
legal-
reason.
That's a legal term that requires
yeah,
by law.
okay.
So, just for the benefit of Ms. Giroux and others, I noted that it really does fail to account for holidays and late spring and summer months when lighting is not even required. And so we'll take the rationale out and just have the requirement, and that, of course, is with the understanding if there's some stumbling block, there's an ability to come back to the,
So we use we use Amon's 3 points and not Marty's points.
no, I think we use my third point, and, well.
'Cause you have one that's
I
redundant.
think we should use Emil's first 2 points.
Yeah.
My point with respect to the negotiation, and then I have, so we don't need my first point under light, and I have spillover illumination into the wetland shall be eliminated. Now, there's a representation that is in
Done.
fact the case.
That's satisfying.
So
So you
that's
can take that
satisfied,
out.
so we can take that out. So we're using my condition with respect to the negotiation, but
Yeah.
Emil's first 2 with respect to lighting. Okay. And then going to the noise. First, we'll look at mine. So the tennis and pickleball courts, I took this directly from Mr. Houston's recommendation as to what should be added to the tennis courts.
Yep.
I think there was maybe a typo in one of the recommendations. It said north and east or west, and that's backwards, I think. I think it's south, east, and west if there are 3 sides. Because the tennis courts are closest to the southernmost properties.
I think what he said, 3 sides of playing courts facing Long Meadow Way.
Right, but then there was a contradictory directive somewhere in the recommendations, north. North was not right.
I didn't actually put that in there. I just have 3 sides.
No, it was in Mr. Houston's recommendations.
his.
It was a typo. I just want to make sure that, to clarify which sides, if there's 2 sides or 3 sides, which sides they go on. That's all.
Hers does say facing the residential properties.
Yeah, that might cover it. Or the closest
And on the
resident.
south side, right?
South side, yes.
On Long Meadow Way.
So just say on the south side.
That does it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
where does that go now? Could someone read it to me, because I'm challenged here? So where would you add the south side?
You could just say on the south, east, and west sides, if you're going to do 3 sides.
Well, she's got 2 sides.
Yeah, so.
Be 3 sides.
It should be 3.
In your-
Three.
Yeah. 3 sides of the
Facing
court
residential
fence,
properties on-
facing the southern residential properties,
There
or
you
the
go.
residential properties
On the south and east side?
It's, well, the compass directions are kind of southeast and.
Yeah. Well, if it's going to be 3, it's actually south.
The only one that won't
East
be
and
covered is
west.
the north.
South,
Yes, correct.
east,
The only one not covered is the
and
north.
west side, okay.
On Long Meadow? No.
Should we be conditioning what sides, or should we just be, and, I mean, we're not acoustical engineers, and neither is Mr. Houston, so
Yeah.
I think we should just be conditioning that there is sound mitigation designed appropriately. I don't think it's our purview to say on which sides, at what height.
Well, he said 3 sides, so we'll just put 3 sides, and that should be, I
But
can
even
look at that
so-
again and clarify it. And then, did you have anything about the noise? You had the same recommendation. So I had, again,
So,
shall
not-
attempt to negotiate reasonable times for the operation of the public address
to
system.
be consistent with the previous one on light cutoff.
Right, exactly, and
get
take
rid
out
of
the
attempt-
rationale.
Get rid
Yeah.
of attempt,
Yeah.
and just go shall negotiate reasonable.
Okay.
I know the new information today, just to bring it up as a brief discussion, but the idea of, rather than having 3 major PA system speakers, on the top of the bleachers facing in a northerly direction, the suggestion was actually placing them apart and of a smaller volume so that you kind of dissipate the noise a little bit better. It doesn't quite carry. I think it, would recommend a difference in the,
Where did that come from?
that came up in the letter from Ms. Giroux today, in a memo suggesting that you could go with
Whoa, okay.
Instead of 3, it's the new information that came in today. We didn't
Right,
have.
but
chance.
is that from somebody who has expertise in sound attenuation?
No, I think it was an observation that is actually correct. That if you do.
Again,
Well,
and I'm not impugning anybody's opinion.
yeah.
We've just had a presentation on the sound system and the decibels, and now you're saying, based on the opinion of a non-expert, both yourself and Ann, that we should modify it.
No, I'm raising it as new information today. Does it affect anybody's thought about this particular
Oh,
topic?
okay, I thought you were advocating that.
No, I think it's an interesting idea, and I think it would work.
Yeah, but
You know,
that's the thing is, that's what you, and again, I'm not
Yeah.
impugning you.
No, I know that. No.
I'd just like to weigh in on that just for a moment. I don't have experience designing PA systems. I do have extensive experience designing outdoor sound systems for residential settings with, for ambient sound and working with sound engineers. Generally, the wisdom, and I don't know if this applies to PA systems, but since sound drops off with distance, the wisdom often is more speakers, closer spacing, lower volume. That's just the sound engineer's advice when we've done exterior sound
That means
systems.
that the noise will carry less far.
Yes.
As opposed to having a few big speakers.
Exactly. It's
Very,
very
very
simple.
high
It's
amp.
very simple physics.
Right.
It's just I'm just weighing in on my experience. I'm not an expert
makes a lot-
on
that
PA
makes a
systems,
lot of sense.
but it would address the abutter's comment.
Again,
I'm not sure how we condition a design requirement.
I'm not sure either.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I don't
but
know if you can-
I'm just weighing in on experience. That's
Yep.
all.
Fair point.
So we'll leave that.
Sorry, are we leaving are we just taking the first sentence, or are we saying if it
Just the
fails?
first
the mon-
sentence,
Okay, okay.
shall.
Okay.
And then back to the noise, I just looked at Mr. Houston's recommendation, and I had his wording verbatim, and so he did use 2 sides of the court fence facing the residential properties, not 3. So if someone knows where he said 3.
He even mentioned tonight in his comments, he said there's a nuance. I mentioned 3 and we got 2.
Yeah,
So he did mention 3.
Oh, so we should
Yeah.
do 3 sides and leave
yeah,
it
you
to,
did mention.
Yeah.
okay.
And I may have misspoken. I think that probably the 3 would have been the north, the south, and then the question is whether it was the east or the west. The buildings to the west.
it would be west.
Be west.
North,
Be
south, and west.
east,
You would
Yep.
leave the east.
So I misspoke previously.
Okay, northwest, okay, I can fix that. All right, we've made some progress. It's now 8:20, we have stormwater management. I know we have Alex Weshart on the line. May I suggest that everybody study these conditions, and at the next meeting, we will try and finalize them. I will say that the issue of PFAS is very important. I can tell you that the information that comes out about microplastics, nanoplastics, and PFAS
Grows every day.
grows every day. Here's the New England Journal of Medicine.
There's a related issue on this, in the bottom of page 2
Did I
here.
finish my comment,
I'm sorry,
Bill?
sorry.
New England Journal of Medicine, March 27th, 2024. And some of this was reported in national news. Microplastics and nanoplastics and atheromas and cardiovascular events. And then another one, a review article, Fossil Fuel Pollution and Climate Change, Health Effects of Fossil Fuel-Derived Endocrine Disruptors. And that's a review article. And part of that article notes the efforts of the industry to basically hide information about the dangers of PFAS. So I have another article, The Devil They Knew, Chemical Documents Analysis of Industry Influence on PFAS Science. So part of the reason it's hard to test for these PFAS chemicals is because the industry has been doing just what the cigarette industry did and the asbestos industry did and other industries, and to try and quell any real regulation. And only now are the scientists trying to play catch-up. So I just bring that to your attention. So this is all happening almost weekly, that we get more and more information about some of these issues. But we will address all of that at a later date.
Marty, just one thought. There's a lot of discussion about testing.
Right.
I recall that they are still using tests in some places that are incapable of going down to 4 nanograms per liter.
Right.
So there's nowhere here that it says when you test for 4 nanograms per liter, you have to use a test that's capable of measuring that.
Right.
All right, that's very important.
Right. Right.
If you can't measure it, then you're not testing for it.
Right.
If your test isn't that fine,
Right. That's why,
we're fine.
I didn't recommend any particular test, but I
I don't know anything about the test.
Yeah, well,
But I know that there's old tests and new tests,
and there's the total fluorine test, which
Right,
is
right.
the most broad test. So we will now put this aside, stormwater management, and I know Alex Weshart is here, so
Should we make a, should we
move to
Continue the hearing?
continue. You're good at this.
do what I wanted to do, I just didn't know how to say it.
Do you want to try it one more
I'd
time?
like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing.
Well, we're not, it's no longer a public hearing. You'll make a motion that the board continue its
continue the
deliberations to
deliberations.
March 26th.
So moved.
So moved. Do I have a second?
I can second that.
second,
Okay, so Pat Norton,
Aye.
Jonathan Poor,
Jonathan Poor, aye.
Bill Wheaton,
Bill Wheaton, aye.
Emil Dahlquist.
Emil Dahlquist, aye.
Beth Herr,
Beth, her aye.
Rick Mitchell,
Aye.
and Marnie Crouch, aye. So some progress, and I'm hoping that next week we can get through all the remaining materials. So I have Alex's red line copy. I have Pat's red line copy, and I saw so much red. I don't know what's left.
I had to rewrite, the only access I had to the, I had to export it from PDF to Word, and then when I was modifying it, just changed everything, so.
Well, whatever. I think that for purposes of our meeting tonight, we should hear what your intention was and hear from Alex Weshart, and also then get some sense of where we stand and how much work is left to do. I did raise the possibility with Patrick that perhaps we might need a civil engineer to put an imprimatur on this. I know the last iteration of our stormwater regulations, Weston and Sampson, did some work on it, and I'm not diminishing your expertise, but I think you're an electrical engineer?
Chemical.
Chemical. And I know, Alex, you're a lawyer. So if we don't have to necessarily address that tonight, but I don't know how you'd like to proceed, but I think we really do need just a nice broad overview and maybe some of the highlights of where we stand. And also, the other thing, I noticed that the letter that we got, that was transmitted to us by Corinne Kale, dated February 5th, it was from the Attorney General, and she had some general comments about our stormwater management bylaw, and I don't know if we have to do anything with respect to the actual bylaw, or how we, or if we have to respond to the comments in her letter.
They're just pointing out things you want to think about.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
I have
Madam Chair,
Alex's
Alex
take on
Whiteside
that.
here. I did take a look at that letter. I didn't see anything there that, in my mind, was immediate cause for concern or a need for an immediate amendment. I think it was more general considerations for potential future action, but nothing that's immediately concerning.
Okay, well, that's really just what I wanted to hear, you know, your take on this and whether you would recommend that we do anything at all in response to it. And your answer is short-term, no, long-term, maybe?
Yeah, that's right, Madam Chair. And I do think we're, based on the bylaw being implemented, I think we're in good shape now to move forward with implementing these regulations.
Okay, so I defer to you and Pat as to how you would like us to just present us with an overview of what you've changed, what you've added, and how, whether you've melded the regulations with the bylaws so that the bylaw can be implemented effectively.
Alex, you want me to tee it up for you to go through
Yeah, I
your
was going to
comments?
say, Pat, if you don't mind, since you did the initial draft, and I will say, Madam Chair, just to note that although there's a lot of red line on here, you know, my comments were not, I didn't have too many comments. Pat did a great job putting together the initial draft. And I do think that the draft we're at now is largely in sync with the bylaw. You know, I'll leave it to the commission and Pat's expertise in terms of whether you think some input from an engineer would be appropriate. I don't think it could hurt by any means. It could only be helpful, but from a legal perspective, I think from what I've reviewed and seen, there's a good consistency between the draft regulations as they stand and the bylaw.
Well, that's very good to hear. Good job, Pat.
Yeah, thanks. Well, so that was the main point of the effort to begin with, was to
Right,
make sure
right.
they aligned with the updated bylaw. Secondly, was a hope to maybe simplify it a bit, eliminate some of the redundant information, and then thirdly, add the form at the end, which I tried to format as best I could, but obviously trying to make it easy for the applicant in presenting the information that we're requesting, but then also on the receiving end for the permit authority to ensure that we got everything that we asked for. And I did have, Charlie said I could use his name. I had Charlie Ware, civil engineer in Hancock, take a look at this. And the two comments he had, one were to clarify the permit authority. It was, you know, it's different in every town. Sometimes it's the Conservation Commission, sometimes the Planning Board. So he didn't read the bylaw, he just read the rules and regs. So the bylaw describes it, the rules and regs doesn't. I think Alex touched on that too.
Yeah, and there, one other note there, Pat, was I think there was some switching back and forth between the use of stormwater authority and permit authority. And
Yeah.
I think, if I recall correctly, the bylaw uses permit authority.
That's right.
So we just want to be sure there's consistency there.
Right,
good
because the
catch.
permitting authority can be either the planning board or the ZBA, under certain circumstances.
Or the Concom, yeah.
Concom, yeah.
Oh.
The second point Charlie had made is he was surprised to see us in the removal of phosphorus, TP. There's guidelines in the handbook, the state on what systems remove what percentage of TSS and whatnot, and nitrogen, and he was surprised that we had that. It's a difficult bar for engineers to jump over, given that there's no requirement reg that says these systems remove this much phosphorus, but he did say that the state's about to update the handbook and they are intending on putting some guidelines in for that. So we might have been a bit ahead of the curve. Well done, whoever initially put those requirements in. So I didn't take them out, even though that's hard to confirm that the engineers met that requirement. Just leave them in. The state might determine how to meet it in the future, hopefully. Those were the only two things he had picked up on as comments. And then the rest were up to Alex.
Yeah. So, Madam Chair, I think if I can make a suggestion for how to handle this going forward, I think what I can do and work with Pat to do is come up with a clean version of the current draft.
Right.
And then I guess the next question for the board's consideration would be whether or not you do want to, I guess, formally retain the services of a engineer to do a more formal review. And if so, I'm happy to, incorporate and review whatever comments they may have. But otherwise, I'm happy to work with Pat to come up with a more polished draft for review at a upcoming meeting.
Right. Well, help me here. I mean, and I confess, I didn't have the opportunity to study this in depth, but the old regulations differentiated between small and large projects. Did you eliminate that?
No, this,
Entirely.
Pat, this did still distinguish between administrative review type projects and
And the permit.
larger scale, full permit projects, right?
That's right.
We changed the way, the bylaw changed the way, there was an administrative review procedure and whatnot, but the old regulations had 2 tiers of review. One was for smaller
Yeah.
project and one was for larger projects.
That's gone now.
That's
but-
I think
gone.
I eliminated all of it.
That was my question.
Oh,
You
yeah.
did eliminate that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, because that was really confusing, because the requirements were the same. Between the small and large projects, essentially, they were the same, and I was always wondering, like, what's the difference?
Right, so these updated regs do include 2 separate sets of procedures and review criteria that apply depending on whether you're dealing with the administrative review or the larger scale full permit review.
Yeah, and the form is intended to simplify the analysis of the project to determine if it is actually, in fact, an administrative review or stormwater management permit, given that you gotta check the area of land disturbance, the slope,
Yeah.
as we define it, the total area of impervious surface, whether or not it triggers that, and the volume of the land disturbance, so that we've all the information on the form that you would need to submit for somebody to then determine is it administrative review or a stormwater management permit.
Right. Well, that was an excellent idea.
I have a question on the municipal stormwater system. If that does not exist, are we dealing with a different topic then on the stormwater management? I don't know if that doesn't make any sense. Well, let's just say or what's the importance of having a stormwater or not having a stormwater municipal system in place? What do they call an MP4? Is that what it is?
MS4.
MS4 in place. Does that impact the regulations in any way, whether you have it or don't have that in a condition? That was confusing to me anyway. You can see I'm confused about this.
I don't think it did, no.
I don't, I think this would apply, well, does the town, I assume the town has an MS4, or is it not?
It does.
Pretty sure all
In related to the street, it does, but it doesn't to, I mean, suppose, again, if you have a wetlands in your backyard, or whatever, during a construction project. How does that, what gets affected there by not going into the public system? Really not making sense here.
Well, so the triggers for jurisdiction under the stormwater bylaw and these regulations is the amount of land disturbance, right? So
Yeah.
if you're in if you're in proximity to wetlands, then you're going to need well, in that case, actually, the Concom would probably be the Stormwater Permit Authority,
Yeah.
as well as the
Yeah.
issuing authority for an order of conditions.
Okay.
But again, you'd have to trigger either being in a buffer zone or having disturbed enough land outside the buffer zone.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, those are the two. If you're outside the no disturb and
okay. All right.
you're under the requirements of the management, the stormwater management permit.
Yeah, I do recall, just one more comment on that, you know, on the turf discussion, where Mr. Houston was relating to heavy rainfall, no total suspended solids because there's no automobile presence or there's no stormwater system, so all the water that falls just goes right through into the groundwater, for example. So it's as if you had to
I mean,
define
the
total.
town has
total
this ad
suspended.
hoc system of drains
Yeah,
that funnel water from street culverts to street culverts, and then sometimes, you know, crosses the roads and goes down and empties water into,
it all winds up.
into the
surface water or
Miles,
something.
mostly the Miles River.
Yeah.
And I've never heard it called a stormwater system. Have you?
Well, MS4, it says the definition here can be an ad hoc system that mixes and
Okay.
matches private
All
and
right.
public.
Yeah, it's basically any conveyances that are under the ownership or control of the municipality that have any sort of stormwater management component.
Oh, okay.
Constitutes a
Very
system.
broad.
And it can be kind of a composite
Okay.
mix of things.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that would
Private
be
and public.
incorporated in what we're doing, I assume then, is that right? Or,
That's our stormwater system.
that's our stormwater system?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
I might add, everybody, we may have a test run for this. On Bridge Street, there are 5 houses that have been in various stages of construction. And there's, depending on how you look at it, either 3 or 4 lots between them. They're at the beginning of Bridge Street and at the end of Bridge Street. And Patrick and I have been discussing, we're gonna check, but those people will come under new stormwater because they're all independent developments. They were not part of one subdivision, so they're not grandfathered. Each Form A is, you know, takes effect whenever groundbreaking happens. They haven't broken ground. The new bylaw is passed. So if anybody sees anybody out there with a shovel on one of those 4 lots, they come under the new bylaw.
Right.
So does the building inspector know that, Pat?
Yes, he does.
Yeah, okay.
Do you know off the top of your head, Patrick, this is a little off topic, I guess, but I know the Conservation Commission issued orders of conditions with respect to some of those lots, and
Absolutely.
and how, are they being enforced?
They're working at it, yeah. They get reports every other Friday from the project proponent as to where they are on mitigation, work in the road, if there's any impact that's hitting the river. So they get a full report every other week.
Well, I'm wondering if the town wants to try and recover some of its costs.
Actually, the town has not, other than some consultant time, the town has had very little expenditure there. As I understand it, the vast majority of the work that's taken place there has been by the developers.
Yeah.
Well, I only asked that because I remember the last, well, maybe not the last, but one of the last rainfall events, I drove down Bridge Street, and Bridge Street was flooded, and you could see the runoff from the impervious surfaces up at Gordon Conwell. There wasn't a waterfall, but it was significant runoff, and the water was just flowing in multiple directions along Bridge Street into the Miles River. And it seemed to me,
They will certainly have to upgrade the whole culvert system that's there.
Yeah.
I was also told that the sale of the first house fell through. That's the house right at the intersection. And the reason was that the basement was wet. Despite all of the best engineering.
Wait until you see the second house. It's even, it's
No,
buried.
yeah, the second house looks much worse than the first.
Yeah.
The first looked to me to be, perhaps in the clear, but apparently the sale fell through because engineer found wet water in the basement.
Oh, yeah. They're gonna have to spend tens of thousands of dollars on flood mitigation.
I think the
I
price
think
of
these guys
those-
may be in over their head.
The price of, the price of those houses is going up too. So, I think our next step here is, we may not pick this up again next week because I really think that we have to focus on the athletic fields. But if we could get a clean copy so that, that incorporates your changes and Alex's changes, and then we can compare. It will be easier to follow what the changes are. So we can read the whole thing, having the red line version as a reference, but I think it will probably help us make more sense of what's happening.
Should we discuss about the idea of the peer reviewer, an engineer reviewing this after it's done?
Yeah, I think, maybe Patrick, if you think it's worthwhile, if the consensus is, just to run it by someone who does this professionally as a civil engineer. Certainly, we want to get it right, and that perspective might be warranted, because we have to notice this out. It's a public hearing. We don't want to do a lot of work and then find out that there's some minor error that has a cascading effect, similar to what happened with the prior bylaw itself. I mean, there was that loophole with respect to a common plan of development or sale. So we don't want to have any kind of oversight that way. So I don't think it would be too involved, because from what you've said, it's in pretty good shape, but,
Yeah, I think that would be most useful for us, for the town, and for applicants as well.
belts and suspenders.
Yep.
So any other comments on this?
It sounds like a good game plan to me, Madam Chair, and I'm happy to work with Pat to get a more updated and polished version for the board's view going into the next meeting.
Right, and I think that the next time we consider this, we'll dive in deep. We'll make this the focus of the meeting so that we can really get it in shape, so that we can run it quickly by a civil engineer and call it a wrap, and get the public hearing.
That sounds great.
Okay, well, thank you for your attention to this. Thank you, Pat.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. I'll aim to get you an updated draft, hopefully by the end of this week.
Good one. Thanks, Alex.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Yes, you
Thank
too.
you.
So I took the stormwater management out of order. The master plan, I can report that we now have, I think, close to a final version of the master plan. Pat, did you have a chance to look at it at all, that was just sent out today?
Yeah, I did not.
No. So it should be in pretty good shape, so I anticipate that we should be getting the planning board should be getting the master plan sometime in mid to late April for review. And any comments with respect to the it's really an RFQ now. Any updates on that? Or section 3A?
It's out on the street. Emil has a copy. I sent him to it, and I've talked to the Middleton firm that did the Middleton.
Littleton.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Littleton, this, some town that starts, anyway. So they've got it and they're reviewing it, so.
What is the deadline to respond to the RFQ?
It's the 4th of April, pretty quick,
Thank you, 'cause-
very quick.
Really
And next
quick.
Monday, I think on the 18th, there's supposed to be interested parties. Patrick, you can correct me if I'm wrong. It's an informational meeting proposed here, I guess, right? Am I right? And on the 18th.
Right.
And,
Of this month?
yes,
Yes.
next Monday. And again, pretty short time frame. I hope we get a good turnout. Rick has reached out to a company in Boston, and I'm doing the same with a couple that I know about, and trying to alert them to take a look at the, it's on a state register of sorts for construction projects.
Yep, combis.
I contacted 7 firms as well.
You have?
Yes.
Oh.
Good.
Good.
One thing that the town manager has requested is that the board have a formal vote of support for that RFP. That's going to be helpful when this goes to town meeting for funding in April,
For the RFQ or for an RFP?
for the money
For the,
to pay
RFQ,
for the.
the funding for the RFQ, for the funding
for
for
the
the form.
RFP?
Yeah,
Well,
For the,
funding for the,
for the
Form-based code,
consultant that we
FBC.
eventually hire.
right. And I would suggest that whatever language he wants, he should prepare, and we will, address that.
Sure.
And the question, too, is whether or not we're going to couple any reference to Section 3A with the form-based code.
Yes, that,
Yes,
part
I
of the
think
plan.
that's a
Right, given,
a
okay.
must-do.
Yeah, but I think that it would be helpful if he provided the language that he thinks is appropriate, and I think I think a majority of the board is on board with getting that form-based code for the town, so.
Patrick, can you just send me a list of those you've contacted?
Sure.
I won't
Me too.
double up on that.
will do.
Well, that's good news. And I provided Patrick with an article. I think we should keep abreast, I know Beth has been involved in this, abreast of some of the discussion in towns about the MBTA communities. I mean, as you all know, Milton rejected the districts that were initially approved at their representative town meeting. And now Andrea Campbell has commenced some type of litigation against Milton, and that will always, Milton is kind of a test case as to what might happen. I think they're trying to compel Milton to redraw their 3A districts, and in the event that it does not, I guess that the Commonwealth would impose districts, but that remains to be seen. So we'll have to keep abreast of that, and also I'm hoping we can have some communication so we know whether we're proceeding down a path that the Commonwealth will endorse, hopefully. Any other comments or discussion about those 2 items? Either the master plan or the downtown comprehensive plan?
I have an unrelated comment, if there's a moment for it. In preparation for the first application that we heard tonight, I reviewed the sign ordinance, and I was surprised at how thin that ordinance is. And there's many, many really great models for sign ordinances in surrounding towns, and that might be not immediate task, but just a in the distance sort of task to sort of tidy up. even just the submission requirements of what a sign permit should include.
That is under the ZBA,
It says the planning board,
did it?
Looks at it,
Oh,
yeah.
got switched? Okay.
that's what it,
That-
Hey,
unless
if
it's,
you
unless
say
I
so.
was,
It used to be.
so,
So maybe when,
does somebody have, I guess I can look online, but it looked like it was the planning board that was,
It's the zoning bylaw?
if you look up, yeah, zoning bylaw, and I forget what section it is,
that may have switched when they switched site plan review from the ZBA to the.
yeah. But regardless of who reviews it, it's
Signage is really important. I
It's
think
very
most-
important.
Most people don't realize.
very
that.
important, and,
Downtown especially.
yeah, and in conjunction with the master plan and the you know, the form-based, potential form-based code downtown, it becomes even more important.
Yeah.
6.3.
Yes, and it's very thin. And like I say, there's really low-hanging fruit in surrounding towns that you can look at for reference.
Yeah.
So, that's all.
Oh, good idea.
You could beef that up in the design guidelines that.
Yeah, yep.
I think the downtown will look
It-
again at its.
It wouldn't
design.
be a heavy lift, is what I'm
Yeah.
saying, and it'd be very valuable. That's all.
Right, and the other thing, we did receive proposed amendments from the Affordable Housing Trust for the inclusionary housing bylaw, because as you recall, with respect to 133 Essex, Town Council had to weigh in on two elements of that inclusionary housing bylaw. So the Affordable Housing Trust, with the benefit of Town Council's opinion letters, has proposed some amendments to clarify what the intent of that bylaw is. So that's something else for our agenda after we complete the athletic fields project.
What I have talked about in the past, and I've been doing a little bit on my own, is I think it would be nice to keep a running list of, like a wish list of what areas of the bylaws need tidying up.
Good idea. I
So,
would suggest
you
you
know,
get a
and just
little
have it-
notebook.
And have it have a little bit of institutional memory so that, you know,
Can you be the clerk of the list?
I have actually asked the building commissioner to prepare one of those as well.
yeah.
Because there are a lot of very finite kinds of things that he has seen over time in his 3 or 4 years here now.
That would be awesome
that,
to
you know,
compile a list.
Give us some,
Yeah.
some real hard kinds of changes that I think are probably well warranted.
And you could
You
create
know,
a wish list and then
relative to the-
prioritize it.
Sure. When you take a step back at what Hamilton has been, it has wanted to be a rural community, and it has wanted to have very understated buildings, understated signage, understated planning instruments to follow, but everything grows up in time. So I think that's one of the things that, the board's gonna have to wrestle with its public, as we, make regulatory requirements more restrictive.
Well, I've noticed, and this is something that it's probably a little difficult to address, but you see, just on Asbury Street, there are several properties where very large trees have come down, and the trees, they're cut in pieces, but they're just there on people's front yards. And what pains me is that kind of neglect really undermines the property values of the immediate neighbors. And it seems, I don't know to what extent, you can address those types of things, but it can be a bit of a problem. I know in some towns, you can't have automobiles in your front yard if they're on cement blocks and that type of thing. So I don't know, how that might be regulated, but, when you see that kind of neglect, if you will, or even disrespect of your neighbors, you just not, I don't know if we can regulate.
So,
that, but
Patrick-
it's just an idea.
Could you share that list from the
Sure.
building commissioner with the planning board?
I don't know how formal it is.
Even if it's a little sloppy and
if
disorganized,
it's just
that'd be great, just in raw
citations.
form, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we could merge things and somebody could make a wish list and we could set priorities.
Okay, now can we turn to minutes? So I can tell you that I looked at all the minutes. I went through them. I corrected the spelling of your name, Jonathan. In some instances, not all.
You missed one.
I missed one. Darn.
I can't find it.
Do you know which date it was?
No, there was only one. Okay, I'm looking for it. Do you want a motion to approve all of them as a package?
Yes, if that works. If you can find the,
The dates, you gotta have the dates.
February 6th,
I just saw another mistake.
Work it backwards. February 6th, January 23rd, February 22nd,
February 22nd.
and then we go back to June. June 6th,
June 6th, right.
June 27th, July 11th. And that's it.
I think Marnie said some of those were already approved.
Thought January 23rd was approved. I thought,
It was just the list that she had for the last, for this meeting.
Beth, do you know if January 23rd was approved? I thought I read that it was.
I'm gonna look it up right now on my spreadsheet and see if I can find it. I'm just looking for the spreadsheet, hold on.
Yeah, what Marty had was February 6, 23, June 6, 23, June 27, 23, July 11, 23, February 6, 24, and February 22, 24.
What was the date again, Marnie, that I'm looking for?
January 23rd
Of 23?
of 24.
Oh,
Maybe it
January.
was January, I don't think it would have been January 23rd of 23.
There's no harm to reapprove it.
Right. I don't think I have the 24 info on my list, because I think we've been keeping up with that. But, yes, I like Pat's
I
idea.
just saw a typo.
Our meeting was the 22nd of February. Or you were talking about January.
January 23rd.
It was a meeting, yeah. Right.
There was a meeting on January 23rd?
Mhm. Yeah. Why don't we just approve what we can right now?
Let's see. Yeah, I have.
You wrote that it was already approved. It should be
So on
posted.
February 22nd, we noted that the agenda said January 22nd instead of January 23rd. This is the February 22nd planning board meeting. So we approved the minutes from January 9th and January 23rd,
Yeah, and they should be posted.
and they should be posted.
I will look right now to see if they're posted.
It wasn't. I looked.
Oh, it was not.
Neither
Okay.
January 9th or January 23rd were posted. But so we can go ahead and approve the others unless anybody has any typos or any other comments.
I can skip over the misspelling, but if you want, and
Of Jonathan's name, it's okay, I can fix it, it's easy enough. In fact, I just saw a typo on the January 23rd one that I didn't look at because I thought we approved it, so I can fix that too, while we're at it.
Oh, I see where the misspelling is. It's July 11th, 2023. Page 2 of 3. I suddenly have no money. Twice. So did you catch that, Marnie?
did you say July 11th?
July 11th, 2023, page 2 of 3, third paragraph, fourth paragraph down.
I get July 11
Oh,
as.
there we go, July 11th, where?
Fourth paragraph down, appears twice, first word in the paragraph, and then in the middle.
Oh, yeah, and you're a B, not a 2.
I went from having no money to being tedious.
There we go.
All right, good.
All right, well, I will, if we approve the minutes, I can go back and
Well, I'm-
correct any typos.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from June 6, 23, June 27, 23, July 11, 23, February 6, 24, and February 22, 24.
And go ahead with January 23rd, because there was a typo in there, and I'll fix that. And so if it's not posted and it's unclear whether I think we approved it, but there's no harm in approving it again.
And January
with-
23, 24.
January,
2024.
So moved.
Seconded?
Great, and so Pat Norton,
Aye.
Jonathan,
Jonathan Porter, aye.
Bill,
Bill Wheaton, aye.
Emil,
Amel, aye.
Beth,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
and Marty Crouch, aye. So this is all good. Any other board business? I just know, I asked Patrick about the Mullen Rule. I think you need to do one of those attestations because you missed, I think you missed a meeting where we talked about the stormwater management. You were on vacation?
Okay.
No, well, no, Rick was.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So what do I need to do the Mullen Rule for?
Because you missed
Can't
one,
vote on it, right? If I don't.
unless you do the Mullen Rule, yes.
Dear, it's such a tragedy. I'll skip it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, at this point, I've got 2 meetings left.
Oh, yes, but you've been paying attention.
I have, but I have a feeling that it's going to be passed by a majority vote.
Well, but the conditions are important. There's lots to address here.
Are we talking about the
have to start-
stormwater for the
Inject
turf
something
field?
underneath all.
Oh,
The
okay.
ideal thing
Athletic
is you
field
have to
projects.
start
Okay,
over
so
down
I'd
the
have to
uphill
watch
side.
the,
There's techniques to do it, but you do it during
I'd have to go back
construction,
and see
not
when I was
afterwards.
on
It's
vacation.
really hard.
Yeah.
But there's ways to
Or
fix
you
it.
could read the minutes.
okay.
Very expensive, but there are ways to do it.
And then I self-certify?
Yes.
And then that other guy's got
Okay, when was that?
sort of oblong blocks. things.
Yeah.
So I missed the
Yeah.
9th.
I'm sure he didn't count on that.
Right.
Okay.
It's like,
Yeah, so we have minutes for the 9th, I believe.
They're not.
Oh, we approved the minutes for the 9th, but you would have to look through your email to actually find them.
Okay.
I'm sure it's a
Okay.
building inspector, just because,
Any other board business?
Yeah.
you know, I mean, it's like one thing after another.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Ooh, multiple seconds. Who wants to adjourn? Pat Norton,
I,
Jonathan Poor,
Jonathan Boer, aye.
Bill Wheaton,
Bill Wheaton, aye.
Emil Dahlquist,
Emil Dahlquist, aye.
Beth Herr,
Aye.
Rick Mitchell,
Aye.
and Marnie Crouch.